Hello there. My name is Corey Rudderkop, and I'm the CEO here at the Cloverdale-Langley Chamber of Commerce. And thanks for watching another one of our candidate interviews in advance of the 2025 federal election coming up on April 28th. We've invited at the Chamber here every candidate running in the three Langley ridings to participate in these video one-on-ones with the Chamber to introduce themselves to our community and talk a little bit about what their priorities are should they get a chance to represent Langley in Ottawa. These videos are going to be posted unedited on our langleychamber.com website and then shared through the Chamber's communication channels in the lead up to final election day. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Latchford, who's running in the riding of Cloverdale-Langley City with the Liberal Party. Kyle, nice to see you. Thanks for coming on and joining me for this.
Hey, good to see you too, Corey. Thanks for the opportunity.
So let's dive in. Did you want to take a minute to maybe introduce yourself, your background, and kind of what motivated you to run in this election?
For sure. Thanks so much, Corey. Well, my name's Kyle Latchford. I'm your Liberal candidate for Cloverdale-Langley City. Been a lifelong resident of our community, and I've been proud to call Langley home with my wife and beautiful daughters. And, as some of you know me, a lot of people know me from my more recent roles, but I spent the last 20 years, whether it's in retail or in business, working directly with the community and front facing in all my roles, which was always my preference, frankly, for the roles that I would take on, is I always like to engage in the public directly, whether it was working with Starbucks, Indigo in management, or more recently with our former member of parliament in government, or most recent roles where I'm helping deliver bus rapid transit to our region from South Surrey to Central City, and then with Township of Langley from Willowbrook Mall to Haney Place Mall in Maple Ridge. What motivated me to run is, I think public service is incredibly important. And I think it's no more important than, frankly, the time that we're in now with threats to our sovereignty. I think everybody saw us with the election of Donald Trump that things were going to change. I think a lot of people didn't expect how dramatically they would change. And I think this is not the time to not get involved in politics. I think this is a time where we have to actually dig in, and good people have to get involved in politics because we need that leadership at a local level.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And so why don't we jump right into that kind of segue there on the Trump and the tariff issue, because obviously that's been top of mind for a lot of our members, and I know just the general public. Langley has a lot of manufacturers and exporters who would
Yeah.
be hit by tariffs into the States. We have a lot of manufacturers who would be hit by or are being hit by our retaliatory measures that Canada has taken. And then obviously, if there's an economic contraction, that impacts everybody. So there's a lot of angst and confusion out there. What are your thoughts on how we ought to be handling this challenge, both kind of the acute tariff issue that we're dealing with right now, but also kind of the longer term thing around competitiveness, internal trade, and how do we kind of protect Canada from being susceptible to these kind of challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? This is probably one of the main things that I hear when I'm talking to residents on the doors, whether it was canvassing the last couple months or even just, a day ago, right? These are the things that are front of mind for everybody. And frankly, we're a border community. Maybe we're not right on the border like the South Surrey White Rock riding, but I'm sure there are many, and I know there are many businesses in our riding that do work back and forth with the states because of the close proximity. And frankly, the relationship is not going to be going back. Is many officials have stated this. We've had a complete 180, and we have to work better at investing at home and actually creating one economy and not having 13, which is what we do right now, which is the provincial trade barriers, which when I talk to many businesses and residents, that's actually the first thing that they bring up that they want to see fixed, which is also why Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that by July 1st, he's going to be removing the federal barriers to getting rid of those restrictions. And I think that's what's going to help our businesses be more competitive and actually help within Canada. But we also got to diversify who we're doing business with. And that's where it works on opening up other trade markets where we make investments in our ports, in our borders. So it's actually easier for businesses to do business with international companies, which is maybe something that was not considered as much before because we were able to easily do business with the States. Whereas now that's just not the case anymore.
Um, so I get on the tariff side, I mean that blends kind of right into the cost of living, cost of doing business, because that'll be the impact we have on tariffs. Is everything going to be more expensive? And I'm sure right after tariff talk on the doorsteps, the cost of living and inflation is probably number two on people's minds. And we know from our surveys and data that costs in general for business is the number one thing that they're concerned of after obviously this tariff challenge. What are your thoughts, whether it's we're talking about a business trying to watch their input costs, a family trying to make ends meet at the end of the month? What's your perspective and the Liberal Party's approach to how we deal with kind of cost of living and helping Langley families get ahead?
Well, and many people know, like I'm married, I have three wonderful daughters where we live, and both of my wife and I work full time. I know a lot of families that hasn't had to be in the case in the past, but for us it is, and many of my friends, both partners work full time, and that's just the reality of what we live in now. But all our families and businesses deserve a shot to succeed. And that's why the government needs to invest in things like childcare, so people aren't making a choice between either having a career and daycare, right? Like a choice that, frankly, my wife and I had to make that decision on years ago to, are we going to do her career? And we were fortunately able to, so she could continue on. We were both able to continue on our respective careers. And we need to keep building those supports, whether it's dental, whether it's pharmacare, also middle class tax cut. And we need to build more homes. If that's the thing that I've heard now, as I've heard a couple of years ago, it's that we need to build more homes and faster. And that's why I'm happy that we've seen measures to make more affordable homes, and increasing the supply from 350,000 a year, I believe was the target, to now 500,000.
What are your thoughts on how we handle? I mean, housing and affordable housing is a challenge. Going hand in hand with housing and the population growth that we would see with that, and what we're seeing in Langley is that growing need for infrastructure. And we know Canada's municipalities are facing a massive infrastructure deficit. I think it's 170 billion or something
Yeah.
to replace the aging fundamentals like water pipes and sewers. Let alone if we start touching, you mentioned transit, community centers, healthcare facilities, schools. So I know that this jurisdiction cuts across municipalities, provincial governments, and federal
Absolutely.
governments. But what would your role, or what would you want to bring to the table as a representative in Ottawa to make sure that Langley, as BC's second fastest growing community, is getting the infrastructure that it needs to support this growing community?
Corey, I've heard we might have some challenges with transit once or twice. I may have. So I appreciate you bringing that
Yeah.
up. And I agree. I think it is. I think it's the infrastructure piece is something that actually cuts across all three layers of government, all three levels of government. Whether it is water pipes, whether it's transit, frankly, which is obviously, as many know, is a passion of mine. And we need to invest. And that's why we've started things like the Housing Accelerator Fund, that actually helped municipalities build more homes faster, hire planners, et cetera, cut through red tape that they could build more efficiently. That's why we also started an infrastructure fund for housing. So similar to Housing Accelerated Fund, but we're focusing on all the things that are going around the house, whether that's pipes, ponds, or streets. I know a challenge for a lot of communities, especially Township of Langley, is retaining ponds. So even something that maybe many don't think of, like that's an expensive cost to burden. And I know the challenge of DCCs is that how we can invest in more infrastructure is how we can start bringing those costs down. And that's something the federal government can invest more. We've done a lot of investment in terms of community centers, recreation centers. It's not just about building streets adequately. We've got to build communities. And that's something that I would continue to focus on with my work, because we also have transit. Transit's also essential to the community. I know I don't need to sell that to you. You know that. And many of your businesses know that, whether we're talking about Gloucester, whether we're talking about Campbell Heights in Surrey, is that businesses can't operate if they don't have that infrastructure, right? You can't have that third overnight shift in the evening if your employees can't get there. So that's why we did things also like signing with Metro Vancouver and TransLink, the Canada Public Transit Fund, so they can get capital funding, so we can do expansion like bus rapid transit, additional service. And that also includes street projects, so we can build the infrastructure that'll actually help businesses succeed, as opposed to kind of waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate that. I'm gonna pivot a little bit completely to a different topic here, and obviously you're going to trying to represent Cloverdale-Langley City, and we know from our members in that area of Langley, public safety, crime issues,
Yeah.
street disorder is a concern. I mean, it's a concern everywhere, but it certainly is a concern there. And that includes retail theft, property crime, kind of that grinding crime that impacts our main street businesses.
Yeah.
What do you think and this is a space that does fall into largely lots of federal jurisdiction. What would you want to see, and what would your voice be at the caucus table if you're in government, around what actions we should be doing to address repeat offenders, enforcement gaps, and just the broader, and beyond that, the broader social issues that are leading to this disorder on the streets?
Absolutely. No. And, as a father, I am concerned about the crime and the theft that we are seeing, whether that's in like the city township, which is not in the riding anymore, but used to be, and in Cloverdale. And, it's something that we need to build a more not just comprehensive plan to fight crime, but we also have to start providing better services and better wraparound services to kind of engage on the full spectrum of how to tackle these issues. But that's why we also have to crack down on, you know, drugs and guns that come through the borders. You know, Mark Carney's committed to training, investing in 1,000 new CBSA agents so we can crack down on drugs and guns that are coming into the border, which flood our streets. And we also have to toughen the criminal code. I know that's a thing that we've, you know, in the previous government, they did do investments on changes in bail reform and strengthening that, but we need to continue to do that so we can actually address violent and organized crime more effectively, but also car stealings. And, you know, when businesses get broken into on the one way, when businesses get repeatedly, frankly, have theft. And I know that's a huge concern, but we do need to engage tougher on that. But there's also situations like we have a lot of mental health challenges and we have a lot of people who need supports, additional supports where, you know, just going to jail and being arrested is maybe not the solution. You know, we have business places that have done great work like Stepping Stone, and we have great nonprofits that do work around this, but we also have to look at the full spectrum of what we can offer and what we can invest in so we can actually start preventing some of these things as well as kind of engaging and making tougher rules when they do happen.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your comments on that. We're galloping towards our time here. So did you? Maybe I'll give you the last minute or two here. Just did you want to share if there's anything? What's the? We talked about the top two issues you're hearing on the doorsteps. I don't know if you want to talk about what number three is, or what other priorities that you want to bring forward as the candidate here, or any closing remarks for the voters here in Cloverdale-Langley City.
Sure, thanks, Corey. The number one issue I hear, and no, it doesn't matter what the profession is or what the business is, it's the situation with Trump. It's very tough for small businesses to operate from what we've seen, whereas we don't know what's actually going to be happening on Tuesday or Wednesday. You know, Wednesday there's tariffs announced, so businesses react and adjust maybe what they're doing, and maybe sometimes new businesses have to react by getting more investment. And then guess what they find out on Saturday? No more tariffs, right? Like that's not a climate for businesses to succeed. And that's where I think it's critical that we have someone who is dealt with economic crises before. In 2008, he was called to service by Prime Minister Stephen Harper to help with the economic crisis. In 2013, he was asked by David Cameron, another conservative government, to come. And that's why I think it's important to have a prime minister like Mark Carney, as he's worked across party lines on that aspect, and he's dealt with economic crises before. From a local level, I think it's critical that we have representation that's strong, that actually meets with businesses regularly, that actually engages, whether it's in businesses or on committees like the Housing and Homelessness Action Table, which I've sat on for a number of years now, whether that was in the federal government or frankly with TransLink, because I think this requires all three levels of government working together to help businesses succeed. And there is no more, you know, crisis time than we have right now with the situation to the border, which is why I think a Mark Carney government is essential to helping us fight the situation with Donald Trump, investing at home and expanding our trade abilities so we can make businesses succeed, but also the residents in our community succeed.
Great. Well, with that, we'll let you get back to the campaign trail here, Kyle. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. All the best in the last, I guess, what we got a week or two to go here. All the best in the campaign.